Union Square Ventures has invested in some of the hottest names in tech, from Twitter to Etsy, and is betting big on new technology like cryptocurrency. They're a backer of Coinbase. My next guest joined the firm late last year, becoming its first female partner. Rebecca Kaden, partner at Union Square Ventures, is with us here in San Francisco. So, USV based in New York, you're going to move there.
Yes.
You came from Maveron, which is based in Seattle. You invested in Allbirds, Dia, Periscope. What's the transition been like thus far?
From Maveron to USV. It's been really awesome and exciting. I think the interesting thing about venture is all these firms are as a pool of capital, and that's a commodity and a collection of people, and being with super smart people who are going to dig into it and talk about the kind of messy stuff of early companies and trends is exciting, and that's what happens at USV.
And you hit the ground running. You've already made some investments, right?
Yeah, I've made 3 investments so far, staying in the kind of consumer world so far that I focused on at Maveron. So we're hitting it running.
So when you look at the broader landscape, where do you see opportunities? Like, what's overvalued, what's overhyped, what's underhyped?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can look at that in a couple ways. I think there are hype cycles all the time, right? And so the AI and ML leads to crypto, and by the time you're in the hype cycle, you're chasing, right? The kind of core of it has already been evolved, and you're chasing the thing that's next. I think one of the great things about USV that I've really enjoyed is we're very, very thesis driven. And so we try to block out those hype cycles a little bit and think about what are a couple things we can believe. What can we make bets behind?
So what do you believe?
So we're really focused right now on a couple of things. One is really broadening access to new markets. We think a lot of tech has focused on really the top of the pyramid and those early adopters, which makes a lot of sense. But we think now that a lot of these platforms and protocols are created, it might be the right time to leverage them to really hit the broader markets. And we're doing that really across categories: financial services, consumer health, big buckets of spend marked by old school brands where news stories are resonating with users and can hit that kind of mass market.
So cryptocurrency, you guys back Coinbase, Polychain Capital. I know Fred Wilson is really excited about it. You know, we just read a story about someone predicting a 90% correction in cryptocurrency. Also, regulation could be coming. Are you concerned?
So I think, you know, the USV thesis on crypto really stems from a belief in decentralization. And crypto is really the first byproduct of that. This idea that massive platforms, the Facebook and the Googles and the Amazons, which have on one end done a lot of good for consumers and on another aggregated the web in a significant way, has created a need for a decentralized internet. And blockchain is really the first technology behind that, and crypto the first example of that. Our thesis is around the decentralization. We believe very much that crypto is going to rise and fall and take a while to kind of even itself out. And until there are significant consumer use cases, it's a very volatile asset. So we're less concerned because we see that in the short term, and we're believers in decentralization in the longer term.
So you studied English, you got an MBA, you started your career as a journalist. And yet you have so many traditional venture capital firms saying you need to have a STEM background to do this job, and therefore they can't find any women. What's your response to that?
Well, my response to you can't find any women is to email me and email the women venture capitalists right now who are committed to changing that. I think there are fantastic candidates out there, and the story of venture, one of the things that makes it such an exciting industry, much like entrepreneurship, is there isn't a single path. There is no story that guarantees success.
So you don't need a STEM degree?
No. I mean, look at some of the best VCs of all time, the people that we admire today. You know, Fred is on that list, but so is Mike Moritz, who is a journalist, and Bill Gurley.
And since you mentioned Mike Moritz, I gotta say, you know, he is one of the people who said to me, you know, we're looking hard, but not enough women are studying STEM, and we're not prepared to lower our standards.
I do remember that happening. But I think that's a myth around this industry, because you look at what's created. What a great thing about venture is there are factual returns, and there are people that create them and firms that create them. This isn't that fuzzy when you are willing to take a long enough cycle and you look at the creators of that. And people who come from STEM is a part, but it's certainly not the whole.
So is it an excuse? Are people not looking hard enough?
It's total excuse, And you know, I think on one hand, people aren't looking hard enough, and on another, awesome things are happening. And people who may have said that before are starting to email us and reach out to the world and really make hires that are going to make this change. So I'm actually It's not going to happen tomorrow, but I'm optimistic on where it's going.
And it's not just about hiring, it's about creating an environment where people of different backgrounds can be equal stakeholders, right? And I'm curious,
success.
What's the transition been like for you at USV, joining an all-male firm that is very tight-knit?
Yeah, well, I spent a lot of time with my partners before I joined, partly for that reason, and I think they did the same with me. These firms are small, they're familial, they're based on trust. You have to trust each other's decisions, and having that buy-in is essential, and it doesn't happen overnight. And so for me, the transition has been quite smooth, but I credit that to two things. One, the time we spent together before, and two, they were open to it. They wanted it. New ideas weren't scary, they were exciting, and the idea that I was different was an asset, not a problem. And I think that's what creates success, and firms that don't have that aren't going to find success in hiring people that aren't like themselves.
I want to talk to you about All Raise, this new nonprofit that you are part of, which is working to increase the number of females getting funded and women in venture capital. Some men have said to me, can we really change things if we're not working together? And men have felt left out.
Yes, which is ironic and great in some ways, and also something we need to confront. We actually agree. And so the story of All Raise is trying to do a lot quickly. And where we started was a group of very devoted female venture capitalists who really already knew each other and said, hey, we're already friends. Hey, we're already helping each other. How do we help this industry too? And it's kind of spiraled from there in a really exciting way. And it's a community that I am proud to be a part of, not only for what we're doing, but they've been instrumental to my career. We agree that this is a goal that needs to be industry-wide and not female venture-wide, and one of our initiatives is specifically around that. So we've started to reach out to male VCs and kind of invite them into the fold and really go to them and say, how can you help, right? Where is this intersection? And it's been really exciting to hear the response. So we're on the same page, and more coming soon on that.
Okay, so you're getting ready to move to New York. We always talk about New York versus Silicon Valley, and I know New York has a great tech scene, lots of up-and-comers, but still not having that $10 billion tech company. When is that going to happen?
I think we're marching in that direction. I think we have signals along the way that are exciting, but what we need in New York, it's exactly what you said. New York is an awesome breeding ground for new businesses right now. Even today with the Zola announcing about $100 million financing behind a consumer company. That doesn't happen every day in New York, and it's really exciting. But we need the behemoths. We need the pillars that Silicon Valley is really based on, and we need the talent there to build those and the risk tolerance to go for it and not to take the early exits, even when early exits can be gigantic. And I think that's just taken time. But as the MongoDBs and the Twilios lead to the next generation, and I think we're going to see that in the next kind of 3 years.
Okay. So speaking of behemoths, SoftBank has almost $100 billion to invest, and that's competing with your money. I mean, I know you guys are earlier stage, but it is shaking up the system a little bit. And so how does that change the competitive landscape for you? Have you had conversations internally about, what's our edge? How are we going to compete with this amount of money?
Yes, I do think that that's more competitive at a later stage point than an earlier stage point from how they've gotten into deals so far. I think it's significantly changed the growth landscape and how the growth investors look at it. At USV, we're early stage investors. And what we find is a couple of things. One, it's extremely relationship driven. That starting business is emotional as much as it is tactical, and the connection with an entrepreneur who believes that you believe in them and are going to be partners from very early days, and you show conviction quickly and with depth and confidence matters. And we think we can do that. I also think the thesis-driven nature of the firm makes it when we believe in something, we have conviction really quickly, and we can dig into that with an entrepreneur because we've been thinking of these topics too. And so where there's that intersection between new company creation and our thesis, we find it to be a powerful interaction. So I would say SoftBank definitely has a big implication on our general ecosystem. On the early stage, at least not yet.